Hey, it's Janette here from Janette's TV. I'm at the Elevate Tech Conference in Toronto. And what a conference this is. 4 days of incredible learning, all kinds of very high influencers in the digital and tech industries, from fashion to food and everything in between. Investments, health. We have so much great coverage coming at you. Please stay with us.
Vancouver, Toronto, we have a really big presence. London, Australia, and Mexico City in terms of our customer servicing offices, and development and engineering offices in Romania and Italy and a few other spots. So, in terms of the revenue on the business, we're around 200 million in ARR. We're probably one of, if not the largest private software companies in Canada, and it's been an absolute privilege over the past few years to help grow this business and grow Canadian technology and software company.
That's awesome. That sounds really great. I want to talk about your daughter.
Okay.
You recently had one.
I did.
So not only are you doing you're building Hootsuite and running that, but you also have a new life that you're responsible for. Yeah, your new startup, which has maybe put a new lens on things for you. And I know you've written recently about kind of work-life balance and perspective on overcoming struggles. And I want to talk about that because from Vegas perspective, we always look to produce content for the early stage founder, people out there who might be able to learn from you. And can we talk through kind of how your perception of your time? I know we were just talking about 5-year anniversaries and things like that. Can we afford time to have a dog or get outside or running our businesses? But how has that changed since you've had that job?
Yeah, for the entrepreneurs and people working in startups, and I think pretty much anybody, work-life balance is a challenge. And first off, I held off. I'm a little bit later than some fathers out there. I had this really big project that I was working on with Hootsuite, and I wanted to be able to enjoy fatherhood, and it all kind of came together at the point where I felt like I could step a little bit back from the business and really get into this. And it has been an incredible journey so far. 7 months in, so I'm just fledgling on this. But there are tons of lessons. One of my takeaways I talk to a lot of people about is the 10,000 hours. Right now, we all forget about how much time it took for us all to learn how to walk. But watching a human create all these subroutines on walking is fascinating, and she just has pure joy in it, a total growth mindset, and seeing her
iterating rapidly.
Yeah, her attacking. First subroutine, you got to do the little bouncy thing, and then you got to work on this and build this muscle, and then work on pull-ups and deadlifts. It's all the routines, and it's going to take her 10,000 hours, but she's going to be expert in it and master it. And so I'm taking that to things that I'm starting to do, and not get as frustrated when I go out and play tennis once a year that I'm not an expert at it in an hour.
Okay, but so let's talk about taking that time, because I think we talk a lot about kind of the work-life balance as if it's supposed to be this equal time parity thing, and you talk about kind of almost interval training, and I think this is a really interesting. It's something that resonated with me in terms of, especially in the run-up to Elevate. You have that program, both the money and the AI stages today, so doing jobs on top of jobs. There are just periods of time where you can't have that balance. You have to, I guess, wait to your deliverables, I guess. How would you like to?
Yeah, one of the ways I talk about is sprinting versus marathoning, and there are periods where you have to do a sprint, you have to go super hard, and there's sometimes you do back-to-back sprints, but I think we all know you cannot sustain sprint for ad nauseum. And, I think as founders and startup team, early team, we really have to guard and protect ourselves for those times when there is downtime to really recharge ourselves and mentally, physically. I think that I talk a lot about. I think and we all know this, but investing time in your health is super important, because when you're not optimal, you can't perform optimally, and you're putting a little in the bank for those times when you really need it.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about health, we're talking about mental and physical health, right? So, can you talk about, so obviously, Hootsuite's at a significantly different scale than in the early days, or even back in the Invoker days, where you're kind of like spin up, or even when you're like running a pizza place. Can you talk about the process of maybe like delegating some of that and giving the time to yourself, or giving projects or workloads to your employees so you have that time? Because I know a lot of times when we talk to you, there's that sense of guilt in terms of always being on, always being responsible. How do you manage that?
It's an evolution, and we all go through as we grow, and hopefully we all do continue to grow. You learn new skills, and you mentioned I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business in high school. It was a paintball business. I did a restaurant, you mentioned a pizza restaurant. I did an agency, and then within Hootsuite, which has been an amazing opportunity, we've grown that from 3-person to 1,000-person team. And so the learnings that you have in that are significant. When you're a solopreneur, you're wearing all the hats, and you get into this thing, and I've got to solve that, firefight that. It's a bit of an adrenaline hit, like just being the person at the core and center of it all. But it is totally unscalable. And my advice to young entrepreneurs is that you need to think about what you know and love doing, and then think about the things that you don't know or don't love doing, and try to shed those off, because usually the things that we're good at and love doing, there's a correlation between the two. I'm personally, I like product, I like marketing, I like culture, and those things I gravitate and spend a lot of time on. I don't love finance, and I know enough to be dangerous. I can read a cap table and a balance sheet, but I've got a CFO, and he is deep on it, and he loves looking at Excel, and every day he just gets really deep into it. If I had to do that, I wouldn't be my best self, and I wouldn't be doing what I could be doing the most. So, as you get going, as you get scaling, you start shedding off some of these things to people that take them on. I think the other thing to remember is that there are people that love doing things that you don't love doing, and so get them.
Hire those people.
Hire those people. Yeah, they love doing. There's people that love operations if you don't like it. There's people that love finance if you don't like it.
Did you find yourself gravitating to the things you enjoyed more, or was it a conscious decision to say, these are the boxes that I own, I will stay plugged in with finances, but I trust you to run that? Like, what's the process?
A little bit of both, I think. I think that human nature is that we often gravitate. I spend the time to learn enough to be dangerous, but you can't run an organization being ignorant on finance.
What's the dangerous level? Because that's a very phrase. But when do you know that you're like? Is it when the engineering team can't lie to you about like how many points it's going to take in the next sprint to deliver a feature, or like?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a bit. Absolutely, it's a bit of that. You got to know. Like, enough to be dangerous is a significant amount. It's a B+ level. It's not a PhD level. It's not a A+ level, but it's a solid B+. I think you got to know enough. Like if you're sitting with investors and talking about your cap table or talking about your finances, revenue growth, etc., that's an important conversation. You also need to be able to switch gears and talk about product. You also need to talk about your marketing initiatives. So leaders have to have a pretty well-rounded skill set. But there are points when you can defer and you can say, you should talk to get in deep with my CFO on
empowering you to take on this new role. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about when things go wrong on that scaling journey. So obviously Hootsuite's been around since 2008. So you've seen maybe like 5 different ice ages of the internet. It's completely different from first launching. Earlier this year, there was a staff reduction, laid off about 10% of your staff. I would say, since I've been personally covering Hootsuite a bit, maybe an on-again, off-again relationship with IPO. I'm more interested in how you navigate the company through those processes when things you're not hitting the plan as it was laid out in the PowerPoint, but things need to change or pivot or evolve. Like, how are you communicating that?
Well, that is just it, which is, I think, a really important thing that I've learned in my journey is that what I believed historically in terms of, or what I knew historically in terms of communication has dramatically increased. So when you're a 3-person team, you can get around, huddle, talk about stuff, you're all on the same page, and you just go. And that's really fast, real simple. As you get to 100, 500, 800, 1,000.
Yeah, you have 15 offices around the world.
Yeah, and so communicating to everybody, keeping on the same page is an increasing challenge. So I spend a lot more time, and to the point on some of the staff reductions and reorgs that we've done, it's a challenging process. For those that have gone through it, it's never an easy day. But you ultimately do need to do the right thing for the business, and we made some changes business. You have to be able to be, I personally want to be so respectful for the people that have been working to build the business for us, but there's always a point of reckoning when you look at the team, the bench, the org structure, where you're making investments, and you have to say, is this the right shape of business for us to move ahead? So we made those tough decisions. They were the right things to do at the right time. We reinvested into other areas. The areas where we reinvested in, we grew our product team. This year, we brought in a new product leader. We've had incredible growth in that group, and really excited about the product that we're putting out and continue to put out for our customers. And we've actually also grown our commercial sales group significantly. They are, with that group, we're experiencing 60% year-over-year growth, which is fantastic at the scale that we're at. And to your question on IPO, we look at, and for just in terms of how we're thinking about it, the PR answer that every pre-IPO CEO will give is that they're building a company that looks like a public company. But what that really means to us is how we benchmark that. And for those who want to think about benchmarking their own businesses, we take the last year's cohort of IPO companies and look at a bunch of different data points on them. So what is the average age? The average age is 14 years old. We're 11 years old as a company, so we're young from them. We look at revenue scale. We're all actually in a similar revenue scale in terms of average. And the average market cap or valuation at IPO is $3.4 billion. So there's some room for us to grow into there. And if you think about 11 years versus 14, so there's kind of a sweet spot for us over the next while.
Did you feel like maybe a greater pressure? You said off the top, there are a few companies at your size and scale from a Canadian perspective. A pressure to maybe speak to that because everyone's looking for, we have Shopify, we have One, we have Lightspeed. Now, the generation prior to that would have been BlackBerry. There are so few companies playing at that global stage that there's a bit of a tall poppy situation where you got the spotlight on you, and there's maybe pressure to not only represent Canada but speak to these things before, because you're obviously the way that you're talking through approach to IPO is say 1,000 times more responsible than some global tech companies we've seen in the news, namely like WeWork. Do you feel like maybe you were speaking too early, or should you just learn something more about that process?
So I think first off, you mentioned WeWork. Our goal as a company is to create a cash flow neutral, cash flow positive company, and we've done that. So we think in doing that, we are able to control our own destiny. If you have to go out to IPO because you have to get money, it is a bad situation, as we've seen, right? It can be a really troubling problem. If we go to IPO, it's because we want to, not because we have to, and there's a big difference there. So that's been a discipline that we brought in years ago, and something that I think has been really good for us in terms of how we think about it. There are a lot of benefits to having a private company, but at some point you've got to create liquidity for your shareholders and for your team, who are also shareholders, and this is important.
Just following on that, you were just talking about control, and I think about that from the perspective of founder control. We were talking earlier about delegating, and when my relationship to Hootsuite is very much in terms of like how I came up in the late aughts as social media was blowing up. I think you and I probably have like the two best Twitter handles at Elevate, Burke and at Tron. Follow us. But I also think of other companies in that social area. I look at a company like Foursquare, which started right as there was all that nascent energy. And you have someone like Dennis Crowley, who the two co-founders stepped down from the leadership position, focus on product, replace themselves with others to do things while they worked on another core component. Do you ever think about, they talk about the benefits of a private company, maybe stepping away as CEO and working on those core components that you are most passionate about, or do you feel like that's necessary, or how do you get to that stage where you're not being pressured?
Yeah, I think first off, it is a very personal decision on any leaders that we have to think about, like, are they the right person for the next chapter of the company? I can't really talk with my board about this. I talk about succession with them because it's important. If I get hit by a bus, what's the plan? And so, I'm talking with them, and I'm also personally thinking about it. I have to say I'm very excited about the future of the business and my role with it, and so there's no imminent plans there, but something that is always a thought.
Well, I think in the relationship with control, Michael Hyatt from Blue Cat, he always says like he's always looking to find someone to replace himself in the company, but it's always from a lens of founder control and his vision. So I think to your point of like the responsible approach and to seize these things is important changes. But let's go back to this idea of Hootsuite as a Canadian leader and then your role in that. Obviously, like it's awesome having you here at Elevate. You've always been accessible to represent Canada in a way that a few other Canadian leaders do. Do you feel like extra pressure to make it or do that? Is that maybe in terms of your time at the company, what things Hootsuite gets involved in? I know you're a B Corp. Like, is there an additional kind of like?
Well, I've been a big bolster of Canadian technology for a long time. We're in Vancouver. I would love to see 10, 100 Hootsuites in Vancouver. I love seeing what's going on in Toronto. I think it's got a really vibrant technology scene here. I think it's a really good time. There's been a ton of recent fundings and millions of dollars coming into the Canadian technology scene. I'm really excited about this upcoming crop that is out there, and so passionate about that. One of the things that I've done, we have I founded a charity called League of Innovators a couple of years ago. Part of what we're doing with League of Innovators is to find and accelerate young entrepreneurs between 17 and 25 years old. And the goal, took me from 16 years old to 25 years old. That was my entrepreneurial journey to getting to Hootsuite. And the thesis is we want to condense that down. We want people to hit their Hootsuites at an earlier stage. And something that Hootsuite as a company is supporting and that I'm personally supporting. And we've had some really good impact out of that. I'm really excited for a lot of the ventures to work with.
Let's talk about a component of that, because before we were just hanging out in the creators on talking about corporate social responsibility, a component of that where I think that's something that you've always been outspoken on, not only as a representative of Vancouver, but just like being a B Corp, just doing that. You're talking about people at that stage of League of Innovators already talking about corporate social responsibility at like 3-person teams rather than being like, hey, we're big, we're funded, we have money now, like that sort of thing. Can you maybe as we close on our 5 minutes, especially just given the state of the world in 2019 and the multiple institutions we have on fire in addition to the Amazon rainforest, about like how we can build more of that at the beginning?
Well, I think, first off, I'm really excited to hear young entrepreneurs approach me and say, like, hey, how should I be thinking about CSR? How should I be thinking about D&I? Charles, I just talked about that, and it's really exciting, I think, the era that we're in. One good piece for those of you that are founders and talking with your board and investors on this, the Business Roundtable in America, which is a group of Fortune 500 CEOs that get together and talk about what is important for corporate America, recently put out a mandate that said that corporate America used to, their key responsibility was to their shareholders. And they've now shifted that to stakeholders, meaning consideration to all stakeholders is really important.
Do you think that has teeth though? Because like you're a B Corp, you've signed documents where you have to meet a standard. This was just kind of like I think I'm going to lose 20 pounds and get in shape.
No, I think it's a huge psychological shift, and I think it's something that founders can take to their investors and say, hey, we're being thoughtful in terms of our whole approach. And I think that it's not only a good social imperative, I think it's a great business imperative. I think that this actually is good for business. You take some of the initiatives that Pepsi is doing in terms of creating a healthier drink line. That is a social imperative, but also it's going to be good for business because people are going to see that. You can look at any number of other businesses that are also following Walmart, for example, banning assault rifles. Societies demanding this, and I think they're going to be right in the long run here.
Okay, it's good business. That's a great place to leave it. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, my pleasure.
See you later.